Hello, you. It's September. PGCEs have started, or just about to start. Here are my 5 tips. For the last few months, I've been administrating a Facebook group for trainee teachers. I'll put the link down the bottom. One thing that's become really clear from a lot of the posts that the group gets is that a lot of people who are starting PGCs are actually really anxious about just what to expect. So my first tip would be kind of just don't panic. You've got 10 months on this course, which either seems like a really long time or doesn't seem like any time at all. And it's sort of both. You're going to have a lot of information thrown at you over the next few months, just a constant barrage of information. If you're doing a straight PGCE, it'll probably be a few weeks before you get into a school. If you're doing like a skit or a schools direct type of course, you'll probably have a week or two actually just learning some of the pedagogy, and then you'll start a placement. And that placement will probably be 4 days a week, often, with 1 day back with all your cohort. And then after a while, it'll turn into a block placement, so you'll have several weeks where you're just in a school teaching. And then you'll go back and you'll have another week or so back with all the rest of the trainees, and then you'll start your second placement. So you're going to have a lot of information thrown at you because it's a short amount of time, really, and there's a lot to learn. But kind of part and parcel of that is no one's expecting you to remember everything. Like, nobody. And you're going to have people on your course, you're going to have mentors at the schools and other teachers at the schools and mentors as part of your course, and they're all going to be just throwing information at you, and you can't take it all in. So don't try to, just try and absorb what you can. I know when I trained, we had a lot of people would come in and do sort of guest speakers, like a celebrity speaker. Some of them were really interesting. We had one guy came in and did about behaviour. He was really interesting, and we had some quite a lot of not so interesting ones. Some of them were really boring, and you do sort of wonder, did you just get this person in to fill a day? Because I would rather have spent that day at home reading or anywhere doing anything else. Anything but this. So don't try and take it all in, and don't panic about the fact that you've had a guest speaker come in and they've talked at you for 3 hours and they've left and you've written some notes and you remember nothing. It's normal. It's really, really overwhelming, and everyone accepts that fact. Everyone knows it's overwhelming. So kind of just take on what you can, make notes, and kind of just embrace it, just enjoy it, because the few weeks where you're with your fellow trainees and you're all kind of learning together and you're all sharing your kind of, what's it going to be like? I've heard this about so-and-so school, and that's kind of one of the best parts. Just enjoy it, It's cost you enough money, you might as well enjoy it. Just try stuff out. You're never going to be in a better position to take in all of this stuff that you're reading and having thrust at you by people, like your lecturers and stuff as part of the PGCE part, or teachers and mentors and stuff in your placement schools, and people that you meet in the street who go, what are you teaching? Oh, here's something you want to try. Everyone's going to throw stuff at you, and you're never going to be in a better position than you are now to just try things out. I remember having a class, they were year 7, and they were awful. They were just horrible. I had such a difficult time with them. And I remember standing at the front of the class, this one lesson, and I was literally stood there thinking, right, what else have we been told we could try from a behaviour management point of view that I could try now, because nothing else has worked with them. Which is really weird, because often they'll say to you, part of your teaching toolkit is all these different skills and things you're going to learn. And you kind of think, yeah, but when am I ever going to have a moment in a lesson where I can stand and think, now, which thing shall I try next? But actually that did happen, weirdly. And so you are going to get loads and loads and loads and loads of things thrown at you. This works with this class, this student, this is best for him, blah, 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 blah. You can't remember it all. I also remember, not only when I was training, but also when I was teaching, every morning you get an email come out Or you'd have like a staff briefing and they'd be saying, right, this student, this student, this student, this class, this student, this student, they need to be doing this, blah, 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 blah. But I can't, how am I supposed to remember any of this? It's just, you are going to have a lot of information thrown at you. Don't try and remember all of it, but do try and take in some ideas of things and just try them out. If it works, amazing, because occasionally you'll try something completely new and it will really, really fly, and you'll be like, way! That same class, that year 7 class, that were absolutely horrible, and one of the teachers that was in the department said to me, you know what, and I'll come back to this tip later on, but he said, get them lined up outside the classroom and don't accept anything less than silence, and if they're not silent when they come in, back out you go. And I was like, yeah, but it's all very well saying that, but it's different when you're a trainee and you're being observed constantly. How's it going to look if I have a class that's in and out of the room 15 times before I even get a lesson started? But he stuck to his guns and said, just, if they're not quiet, out you go. And that's what I did with this class, and total transformation. Took 2 lessons, and because it was computing, I only saw them once a week. Took 2 lessons. And I mean, as a case in point, my observations for that class went from satisfactory, and I thought even that was being generous, to outstanding. And a lot of that came from that initial thing, because the lessons, as far as I thought at the time, so feedback suggested, were pretty sound. The activities and the sort of assessment for learning, all the other bits, were fine. It was just that behaviour brought the whole thing down. And so it got to a point where that class, they lined up outside in silence, and I mean silence. If there was a peep, just a peep out of any of them on the way in, all of them back out. 7 times, I think, was the record for that class before they finally realised, oh, actually, you know what, we kind of do need to be silent. They went out, they came in silence, they stood behind their chairs in silence, and they stood and they looked at me in silence, and I made them stand there for about 45 seconds, which is a long time, in utter silence, until I eventually kind of went, and they sat down. And I did the exact same thing for my observation lesson. And, well, you know. So, yeah, try things out. Some of them will work. Some of them will be an absolute disaster. But you're never going to be in a better position to just try stuff and see what works. Some of it will work for you. Some of it won't. Just try it. Just try it. Nothing to lose. Get them lined up outside the classroom at the start of the lesson. In silence. Now, I'm not suggesting this is something you're going to need to do every lesson forever, but as you establish yourself with each of your classes, they need to kind of know from day one that you aren't going to be toyed with, that you have high standards, you have high expectations, and you will make them meet them. Get them lined up outside the room in silence. They come into the room in silence, and they stand behind their chairs and wait to be told to sit in silence, and anything less than silence, they all go back out. You will get to a point where they will start to regulate each other and they'll be like, oh, for God's sake, shut up. And that's good. Not only is it good because it saves your voice, because they're kind of moaning at each other, but also it shows that you've got already some of them on board. Don't accept anything less than total silence in those sort of situations. Trust me. Number 4 is sort of a tip that one of my mentors gave me quite early on in my training, and he was vicious in his feedback. I remember one lesson he observed me quite early on. This was like my 2nd week on placement, 3rd lesson I'd ever taught probably, and he sat at the side and he was sat kind of making notes all the way for like an hour, making notes. The lesson finished and they went, and I went off somewhere and we met up again later on for feedback, and he had literally diarised everything that happened in that lesson chronologically from start to finish. 9:01, class enters room. 9:02, class is still not silent, blah 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 blah. 9:07, Matthew is mucking around with books on the bookcase. Mr. Bolton has not done anything about it. 9:08, still mucking around on the bookcase. 2 girls at the back talking, unchallenged, for like the full 60 minutes, and it was the most brutal feedback I have ever had, because he went through it point by point by point. I didn't make that mistake again. Kicked Matthew out the minute he came in the next lesson. The advice he gave me was, the thing is, no class wants you to fail. No class is sat there mucking around thinking, hopefully if we keep on at this he'll break and he'll cry, ideally, or the very best would be throw something at me, like a book or a chair, another student. No one wants you to fail. None of your mentors want you to fail. None of the other teachers want you to fail. Really, none of the students want you to fail. And that's actually quite comforting. And the other thing, part and parcel of that, is, and I mean, this is a whole separate video in and of itself. I mean, it's a book probably in and of itself, but I've long been of the belief, from having worked in mainstream and in special ed, that all behaviour is communication. One way or another, it's all communication. And so the kids that are talking over you or answering back at you or just not doing what you've asked them to do, I had one lesson which it totally threw me. I didn't know how to react because I got them doing something, and I walked sort of going around, and this lad was sat just typing up his CV, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm working on my CV." I was like, "Right, is that what I've asked you to do?" "No, just I wanted to do it." I was like, "What? Right, okay, so what?" Kicked him out. All behaviour is communication. If you're kind of got them off on a task and you're starting to lose them a little bit, and they're starting to chatter quite a bit, and the volume level's going up and the productivity is going down, they might be bored. That activity might not be challenging enough, or it might be too repetitive, or it might be something that they don't understand. It might be too hard. It's all communication. And also you've got to keep in mind there's probably a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, things at home, things within their peer group at school. The person they fancy might have just turned around and gone at them at lunchtime or something. There's no way of knowing exactly, except that all behaviour that you come across in the classroom, in the corridor, in the playground, everywhere, is communication, one way or another. And the kids that seem like they hate you, like they want to just make your lives utterly miserable, they probably don't at all. Probably don't. They don't at all. I had a year 7 girl, same class as the one I've talked about, who made my life miserable because I couldn't get her to do what I wanted the other kids in the room to do, which was to come in and sit down and just get on with it quietly, ideally. And her preference was, rather than to sit and quietly get on with work, and bear in mind I tried moving her in different places around the room several times, her preferred response to that was to wait until I wasn't looking, slip under the desk, crawl the length of the room under the tables, in a computer room, lots of cables and stuff, not good, and kind of hide, basically. I've never seen anything like it before. And so I sat her down this one afternoon. I think I kind of called her back at lunchtime after having kicked her out. We looked through her student record of all the logs she'd had for talking or mucking around or whatever, and I asked her, as a teacher who's not met you, what am I supposed to expect from you as a student when this is what I've got to go on? And she was like, "Well, you're going to expect me to be a troublemaker and to be horrible because I just muck around all the time." And I said, "My perception of you as a student is quite the opposite, actually. Obviously you do muck around a little bit and you do talk quite a lot over me, but you're bright and you're enthusiastic and you're very outgoing." And so I basically tried to put a positive spin on it, and it was all true. I didn't lie to her, but she sort of said, "No one's ever said anything nice to me before," which made me want to cry. And so from that came this idea that I said, "All right, well, how about this? Obviously, the way things are currently isn't really working for you. So rather than we come into the room and there's 5 expectations on the board every lesson, how about we give you 3? And your 3 expectations are that you stay seated, that you don't disturb people around you, and that you don't shout out." I think those were her 3. They might have varied a little bit week on week, but those are the core 3. And I printed them out and I gave them to her, and I said, "Every lesson, these are the expectations I have of you, and I will come around and I will check in with you every few minutes or every 10 minutes or whatever it might be, and if I feel that you've met those expectations, I will give you a tick, and every time you get a tick you get a merit," or whatever it was the school had, I forget now, and if you get ticks for all 3 you can have extra merits, or I forget what it was I did now, but anyway, totally transformed her, because all of a sudden, rather than her having to think, what am I supposed to be doing this? They were right there in front of her, and I gave her the attention that I think she needed. Really, she just needed a lot of positive reinforcement, and that's what I gave her. Now, I don't know from that day to this what exactly her behaviour was communicating, whether it was communicating just a lack of interest in the subject, whether it was communicating a lack of liking of me as a teacher, possible, although she did respond really well to the targets. I sort of felt like we had quite a good sort of relationship there. Whether it was stuff at home, whether it was stuff with her friends. So I don't know what her behaviour was communicating, but I do know that putting in that little bit of extra attention, that little bit of extra time, and putting aside time to kind of try and deal with her on an individual level completely transformed it. And transformed that class. Yes, I'm willing to admit that probably 95% maybe of the transformation of that class was just me persevering with them as a whole, with the whole kicking out and back in, back out, back in, silence thing. But I think also, because she was such a strong character and so strong-willed, getting her on board, I think, had quite a big knock-on effect. Certainly with some people in the room. There were a couple of people that were kind of very close to her friends-wise that I think wised up to the fact that, if she's kind of toeing the line, perhaps we should sort of toe the line. So yeah, behaviour. All of it is communication, good or bad. It's just trying to work out what they're trying to communicate. That's the hard part. Every lesson then, I would have these rules up on the wall, projected. It was the first slide, regardless of what we were learning about that particular lesson. The first slide would always be some variation of these rules. I didn't have quite the same rules for my Year 11s, for example. So lining up silently, entering the room silently, standing by chair silently, always the same. Some classes didn't need this reminder. The youngest, sort of 7s and 8s, often would just know this was what was expected. 11s I wasn't too fussed about. I didn't mind them just coming in. There wasn't a huge number of them, but these were kind of always up on the screen for them to see. Yeah, so the first 3, if they lined up silently, came in silently and stood behind their chairs silently, everyone in the room would get a merit for each one of those rules. So theoretically every person in the room could leave the lesson with 3 merits if they met these 3 expectations. Obviously, of course, you can remove those merits during the lesson if you feel you need to. Working quietly and sensibly is a rubbish rule. How are you defining quietly? How are you defining sensibly? It's meaningless. Get rid of it. Shouldn't have done that. Bad example. Follow instructions first time, reasonably clear. I shouldn't have to say to you 15 times in a row to do this and then lock your screens or whatever. Once should be sufficient. Don't distract others. Again, it's a bit kind of vague and everything. I mean, it's obvious to us as teachers what it means, but to a student, don't distract others. Well, what? If I need to ask the person next to me a question because I'm stuck, am I not allowed to now? If you say to us, talk with the person next to you, you've got sort of 30 seconds and we'll have a class discussion. You've just told me I'm not supposed to distract others, so how am I, what? So again, it's a bit vague. Raising a hand for questions and answers, basically is saying don't just shout out. I always tried to mostly frame them in a positive sense, line up silently rather than don't come out, don't be outside the room noisily. Raise a hand for questions and answers rather than don't talk over me. But it's entirely to you. But these are always roughly the same. Having these rules up, they sort of reinforce themselves a little bit. You don't really need to constantly say to the class at the start of every lesson, you should have lined up silently, you should have entered the room silently. They're there. It's probably not a bad idea actually to have a lot of these rules up on the wall or even outside the door so that the kids see them before they even get into the room. It's a constant reminder to them. So I would absolutely have a set of classroom rules established, and I would also make sure they're reinforced regularly at the start of every lesson. Would be the best time, probably. So in a secondary classroom like mine was, I had a slide. It was the first thing the students saw when they came in. It was the first thing we looked at before we got cracking with the lesson. However, in a primary school, that's probably not the best thing. So instead, I would suggest something like these. These are danglers. It's like the 5th time I've attempted this, as I smile every time I say it. And the idea is they're sort of threaded together and they just sort of hang from the ceiling, and they're double-sided. So if you have them kind of away from the walls, students can kind of see both sides. There's also these, which are amazing because not only are they striking visually, they do serve as a kind of constant reminder. So when that slide's not up, the rules are still there. These were provided to me very kindly by a company called the Sticker Factory, and Not only have they very kindly provided these as a sort of visual prompt, they are available on their website if you'd like to order some, and they're really inexpensive for what they are as well. The Sticker Factory have also very kindly provided a selection of stickers like these, which again are probably more for primary than secondary. Not that I haven't had students in secondary who wouldn't have enjoyed a well done sticker from time to time. I think I actually did use stickers for a while. The 7s and 8s went for it. The 10s and 11s not so much. But these are really, really nice. Each pack has several sheets. There are hundreds of these stickers available, and I'm going to give some of these away exclusively to members of the Trainee Teachers group. But it gets better. The Sticker Factory have also very kindly provided a 25% discount voucher exclusively to members of the group. So if you're watching this somehow and you aren't already a member of the group, you should join. Like, seriously, join. If you are a member, then it's your lucky day, because you could be in a chance of winning these. There are 10 available, 5 lots of each variation, and the way you win them is to like this video, obviously, to share this video with the world, maybe, or at least people who might be interested in it in some way, shape or form. And as before, comment on the post in the Facebook group to say that you've liked and shared. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. If you wanted to look through the other videos and like those too, that'd be nice. No pressure. We've talked about this. I'm pretty confident, don't know for certain obviously, but I'm pretty confident a few people last time I asked them to do this merely clicked the subscribe button, which I'm pretty sure I was quite specific. You do need to smash it in order for it to work. It's not my rules. So make sure you like the video, smash the subscribe button, and I will pick 10 people who comment on the video post in the Facebook group, and they will win one of these. And again, thank you very much to the Sticker Factory for providing these, and for providing those, and for their 25% discount, which is hugely generous, particularly when you consider that the price is actually very reasonable already. So thank you very much to you, and for you watching, thank you for watching. Cheers. That's it.